Thank, thank you for being here. My name is Christine Flores. I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Albany County. Thank you for being here. A little bit about the League. For over 100 years, the League has been sponsoring candidate forums to help citizens learn about issues and the candidates for office. We are a nonpartisan volunteer organization, and our mission is to promote an active and informed participation in our democracy. The League neither supports nor opposes candidates or political parties. As an FYI, I live in Loudonville, so I will not be voting for any of the candidates in Bethlehem. This is one way the League endeavors to ensure the forums remain nonpartisan and unbiased. Our goal at the League is for you all to have the tools necessary to make informed decisions about your votes. Please consider joining the League, whether you're male or female, to support our work. For information about hours and locations on May 21, the day of the election, and the voting process, you could go to the League of Women Voters election information website at 411.org, vote411.org. Vote 411 includes information about voting, as well as checking on your voter registration and finding voter locations. While the League organized this evening's forum, I want to acknowledge our sponsor, Bethlehem Central School District. Also, I want to thank all the volunteers that made this evening possible and who are here tonight helping to ensure all goes smoothly. Our timers this evening are League members Virginia and Jack Gajewski. American Sign Language interpretation and live closed captioning are available during tonight's forum. The League of Women Voters collaborated with Disability Rights New York to provide these accessibility features. To see the closed captions, you could click the 3 dots button on your bottom bar labeled More. After that, choose Captions and Show Captions. You can choose View Full Transcript to see the transcript in the window on the side. Alternatively, you can do this by going to the website https://www.streamtext.net/player?event equals DRNY. And you could view the captions in stream text in your web browser. The following ground rules have been agreed upon by the candidates in advance and will govern how we proceed.
Ms. Flores, I'm
Yes.
very sorry. Can I have you pause for one moment? Some
Yes.
of our accessibility is not showing in our stream, so I'm just going to pause us for one moment, please.
Okay.
All right, I apologize for the delay. Let's try this again.
Okay, so I'm going to pick up with the ground rules. The following ground rules have been agreed upon by the candidates in advance and will govern how we proceed. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, 2 minutes to answer each question, and 2 minutes for a closing statement. After the opening statements, I will start asking questions that have been submitted in advance by the public and have been reviewed by the League of Women Voter Volunteers. Questions have only been edited for brevity and to weed out duplicate questions. Just so the audience knows, the candidates have not seen the questions in advance. Jenny Jogevsky is our timekeeper, and she will be holding up signs signaling to the candidates when 1 minute remains, then when 30 seconds remains, and then when to stop. The candidates have chosen lots to determine the order of speaking. We will go in order of these lots for the opening statements. I will then rotate to the next candidates determined by the lots to be the first to answer the question. The rotation will proceed until we have gone through all of the questions. At the close of the forum, the person who drew the last lot will make the first closing statement. Our timers are visible to the candidates, and it will give each candidate a warning as time runs out. If any candidates go over time, I will politely call on them to finish responding. I want to ensure that we move along in a timely manner and everyone has time to answer questions. This forum is being live streamed and recorded recorded by Bethlehem Central School District for viewing online if you'd like to go and look at it later. Tonight, we have candidates for Bethlehem School District Board of Education. They are Lauren Grosso, Jason McLaughlin, and Catherine Nadeau. School board members hold office for 3-year terms, and the positions are considered part-time. Board members establish policy and direct the administration of the schools in the district. Every Board of Education in the state of New York has legal and financial control over local school matters, subject only to the limitations imposed by the U.S. Constitution, federal law, state law, regulations of the Commissioner of Education, and as elected representatives, the sentiment of the constituents of the local district. Bethlehem Central Board of Education meetings are usually held twice a month. Mr. McLaughlin has drawn the first lot, and he will start with his opening statement. Catherine Nadeau will go second, and then Ms. Grosso will go third.
Christine, we all set? Yep. Okay. Excellent. First off, thank you to the League of Women Voters of Albany County for hosting this event. My name is Jason McLaughlin, and I am a candidate for the school board. I live near the high school with my wife, Christine, and our 4 kids. Jack, who just finished his junior year at the University of Hartford. Leah, who is a junior at the high school. Jude, who is a freshman in the lab school. And our 7th grader, Cole, is in the middle school. Currently, I work as an IT manager at Berkshire Health Systems in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Prior to joining Berkshire, I was an IT consultant and worked in hospitals all over the U.S. My primary focus during my professional career has been managing projects, from smaller initiatives to enterprise-wide solutions. This experience has taught me valuable lessons on how to solve problems in large organizations. Specifically, problem solving within these organizations requires skillful negotiation, compromise, transparent communication, and most importantly, persistence. A district with the resources of BCSD should provide all students with the opportunity to reach their full potential. A district that has exceptional facilities, athletic venues, clubs, honors programs, etc., should also have exceptional services to our students and families that need it the most. Our schools do many great things, and by any metric, BCSD is an exceptional school system. BCSD should strive to also be a leader in special education and be at the forefront of exploring alternative educational methods, serving as a model for the capital region and all of New York State. Bethlehem deserves a board that will be the voice of the people and representative to their needs. I want to use the skills that I've gained over the years to work with the board, administration, teachers, community to ensure BCSD is the best it can be for all of our students. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And thanks to the league, thanks to our accessibility team, and thanks to everybody who is spending their time to watch and get up to speed on what the various campaigns are about. My name is Catherine Nadeau, and I'm a candidate for the Board of Education here in Bethlehem. I bring to this role experience, integrity. I am a community builder, a collaborator. I foster connection wherever I go. I believe strongly in partnership, and I stand for good governance. And I bring all of these things with me to the role of a member of the Board of Education, just as I have for the past 3 years. When I look at Bethlehem, I look at an exemplary district, one that is working to serve the needs of its students, as well as the other stakeholders who are part of our school community, like our administrators, our teachers, and our community members at large. And there's still growing edges. There are still places where we can expand the good that we do and where we can grow to make sure that what we're doing is consistently better each and every year. And I look forward to serving a second term with your support in order to make that happen. I am, in my day job, the Deputy Director for Catskill Mountain Keeper, an advocate working to make sure New York State has good, strong, clean air, clean water, and healthy communities, laws, and regulations. So I know how to stand up for the issues that matter most. And when it comes down to what I do with my free time when I'm not serving on the board, I'm also a Girl Scout leader and a very active volunteer in the Girl Scout community here in Northeastern New York. So I'm dedicated to growing young leaders. I'm dedicated to serving my community, and I'm dedicated to doing so in partnership and with the people who are here working with us at the table. So thank you again, and I'll hand it over to Lauren.
Hi, I'm Lauren Grasso, and I am running for school board. Thank you also to the league for hosting this event tonight and all of the district staff that have given up their Wednesday evening to make this happen. I am a mom of 2 children in the district. My daughter is in 6th grade at the middle school, and my son is in 3rd grade at Slingerlands Elementary. I currently serve as the Chief Risk Officer at the New York State Tax Department. I've wanted to dedicate my time and my talents in a more serious way to giving back to the community for some time. Personally and professionally, the timing was right for me to do that, and that is why I have decided to run for the Board of Education this year. I am a product of a public education, and not just K through high school, but I attended a public college and a public university for graduate school. And following my educational endeavors, I have dedicated myself to public service, both as a prosecutor and for the past 10 years in service to the state of New York. So I'm looking forward to this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And we will get started with our questions. Ms. Nadayo will go first. And the first question, and they'll all be answering the questions. How does your background and experience equip you to be a school board member?
Well, thank you. I mean, first of all, like I said, I am a lifelong collaborator. As I have been working for nonprofits for most of my career. And when you're going to accomplish mission-based work, when you're going to go out there to try and change New York State's laws and bolster our laws to make them better and stronger for our communities, you need to do that with folks in community. You need to do that with all sorts of different other organizations, and you need to do that with people that, maybe you agree with and maybe sometimes you don't. So you've got to be able to build bridges, bring people to the table, and do the work together that needs to be done. I'm also dedicated to social justice, climate justice, racial justice. And when I am in a room and part of a decision-making team, I'm always trying to think about who's not here, whose voice isn't here and why, and how do we bring those voices in? I think that's incredibly important, especially in a large community like Bethlehem, where we have lots of different perspectives. This is not, nothing is completely uniform, and that's okay. That's good. That's one of our strengths. So it means, though, that you've got to do the extra work to listen, to understand, to gather different perspectives, and then to do the best you can to make the best decision with the best information that you have. So that's part of my experience. Other parts of my experience include, again, working to grow strong leaders and understanding directly from my scouts what's going on in our schools, and listening, talking to our families about what's happening out there, taking calls from folks who want to talk about and want to learn more about what's going on with the board, and making sure that I'm available to bring those questions into the Board of Education space. And serving on the board for the last 3 years has given me a great introduction and education and ongoing education into fiscal management and how we run a school district. Thanks.
So,
Ms. Grasso will be going next. Thank you.
Thank you. I am an attorney. I have been practicing for 16 years. My first job out of law school was in the Orange County DA's office, and I specialized in appellate litigation and motion practice. So I can write you under the table. But beyond that, my service for New York State government, I worked in the governor's office for 8 years, where I held a variety of roles. I was an assistant counsel to the governor, where you get really good at reading and understanding legislation and regulations. My final position in the governor's office was director of administrative services, where I handled a budget, kept that budget in check and balanced, despite the many pressing needs of the governor's office to spend that money. And also got some experience in human resources management. In my role now, I work with many various divisions and bureaus throughout the tax department, and we're the risk managers. Nobody likes the risk managers, but I, along with my team, have found ways to build relationships and collaboration within those departments, and to make the process of risk management as painless as possible. Oh, I have 30 seconds left. But perhaps most importantly, I'm a mom. I've got 2 very different children, and no 2 children learn the same way. And my experience in the Bethlehem school system has been nothing short of amazing. Every day, the educators that interact with my kids, I'm blown away with. The teachers in Bethlehem really care about your children. Okay, I have to stop. Jason, you're up.
thank you, Lauren. So my experience, I too am a parent. I have 4 very different children who all learn very different ways. I've experienced the district in elementary and middle school and high school. But I think that, what I really can bring to the board is just decades of experience in managing problems, managing big projects, managing people, and solving very, very hard and complex issues in organizations of similar size as the school district. When you're a consultant, you are often called in when things are bad, because they usually don't call you when things are going great. And so usually we would walk into very challenging situations, and we would have to very quickly diagnose the issue, come up with a plan to solve it, and then execute that plan. And it's something that over the years I've gained a fair amount of skill in, and it's something that I feel very confident in my ability to do. I think that having somebody with this kind of background is something that would be very helpful to the board as it faces a lot of challenges that it has coming up in the future. Including the decline in population that's coming up, and all the other initiatives that are coming. So, thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Ms. Grasso, and then it'll be Mr. McLaughlin, and then Ms. Nadeau. Okay, what role do you think the school board should play in supporting the learning and emotional needs of all students?
It's critically important. Our kids spend the majority of their waking hours in school. It's sad to say, but in some respects, I think our kids spend more time with their teachers and other adults within their school and their fellow students than they do at home with mom and dad. So I would say that, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Not a problem, and at any time if you need me to repeat. What role do you think the school board should play in supporting the learning and emotional needs of all students?
So, at the first line of defense, it's the teachers and other support staff within the schools. And I think because the school board doesn't sit within the school every day to hear what's going on, it is of critical importance that the school board has regular, thorough conversation with the teachers and support staff within the schools to understand the needs of the children that they are educating. What was the second part of the question? I am so sorry.
That's okay, don't apologize. So the first was supporting the learning and the supporting emotional needs.
Emotional needs. Yes, yes. I think that overall Bethlehem does an exceptional job of not just teaching children math and science, but also addressing emotional needs. The counseling services that are available are excellent. And I think that lots of kids take advantage of those services on a daily basis. And the amount of special education opportunities are available. But it's the job of the board to ensure that fiscally and administratively that those services are not just available to all of the students in the district, but that they are accessible.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you. So I see this as kind of two parts. To support, I think the board owes it to the faculty at the school to make sure they have all the tools they need to make sure that they can educate our kids with our students with everything they need. And I think that the board supporting the staff is the first point. Secondly, in terms of their emotional needs, the responsibility of the board is to be the conduit between the public and the administration. It is very important for that board to listen to their constituents and listen to the people in the community and hear how the district is doing in terms of addressing their child's emotional their needs. And then it is the board's responsibility then to take that to the administration to make sure that these needs are being met. In my experience of personally and talking to other members of the community, this has not been something that the school has thrived in recently. Parents have expressed to me, and I've experienced it myself again, a process that is overly challenging, where one has to essentially fight over and over again to get the services that that their students need and are legally authorized to get. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. And I think that, I agree with my colleagues here in a couple of ways. I mean, first of all, the board's role is to understand the needs of our community, the needs of our teachers, the needs in the schools, and to gather the different perspectives in order to do so, right? So that means listening to parents, that means listening to teachers, that means listening to the administration, so that we have a real understanding of what are the resources that are needed and how do we make sure that we allocate those in a way that's not only sufficient for our students to do well, but to really thrive in the school community. And we need to keep students and their learning at the center of all of our decisions, because that's what it comes down to and that's what it comes back to. And as everybody has said here, we're all parents and we can see with our children how different kids learn differently. And then we've got, throughout the district, throughout our neighborhoods and our communities, we have students with additional needs, and we have to make sure that they've got the resources that they need as well. And that when families are part of the conversation as to what it is their students need, to make sure that they've got the information that they need to help guide the decisions, to make sure that they are really strong partners in decision making, and make sure that the information is being shared on an ongoing basis in a way that everybody can understand, so that we can make the best decisions that we possibly can. And then to gather feedback as this process is ongoing, make sure that the board, the administration, teachers are getting feedback from students and families about how the district is or isn't working for them, gathering that feedback and then using it to iterate, come back to the beginning, making sure we understand perspectives, making sure that we're providing resources and moving on. The social and emotional learning component is critically important in today's world. We need to be able to foster self-awareness and community awareness in our students. And I'm glad we're doing that.
Thank you. The next question is, and we'll be starting with Mr. McLaughlin, then to Ms. Nadal, and to Ms. Grasso. How should the district implement measurable goals in its efforts to meet the learning needs of all students? How should the board evaluate the district's efforts in this area? So how should the district implement measurable goals in its efforts to meet the learning needs of all its students? How should the board evaluate the district's efforts in this area?
Thank you. It's an excellent question. So schools, there is a very significant opportunity to collect lots of data. There are literally hundreds of kids going through that school in dozens of different classes, dozens of different teachers, and we can track all the child's performances academically and the teacher's performances longitudinally. So what I mean by that is that if you have, say, a 10th grade teacher and the kids that they inherit from the 9th graders from the year before, how well do they do compared to the year before? And then how well do those kids also do the year after, to see what impact that teacher had on that child and to see how they progressed through the year and how much of an impact that particular teacher's instruction had. I think that data is extremely important in evaluating progress or lack thereof in certain cases. And, particularly when it's something that has a cost to it, is it something that's been effective? Has it met the goals of the initiative or has it not? And that is something that basically most or all new initiatives really need to have what we call in the IT world KPIs, or key performance indicators, that you're expected to, grades are supposed to, we hope grades go up 10%, 5%, absenteeism drops 5%, 10%, stuff like that. So I think that making sure that's part of the equation when new initiatives are rolled out, I think is very important. I think the board should monitor and make sure that that's part of what the district is doing going forward. Thank you.
Well, as a district, we have set goals as part of our strategic planning process, and those are goals that we should be revisiting on an ongoing basis, making sure that that is still the end result that we're aiming toward. In addition to that type of analysis, we can be gathering information both qualitatively and quantitatively. So we can be, and we do, gather information from our students and our families about what their experience is like in our schools. What is their lived experience? Because that brings with it a ton of expertise that we can use to apply to to what's happening in the classroom, what's happening in our buildings, and what's happening on the fields, right? Understanding how do students feel about their education? How do parents feel their students are doing? How is our community holding up to our goals? And then, as Jason was saying, there's also quantifiable pieces. There are the data pieces of, what is happening year over year. How are our students performing on standardized tests? What does this tell us? But then also, what doesn't this tell us? I mean, that's one of the things that I've really been engaged in as a board member, is trying to figure out, okay, well, we have this information, but again, what have we left out? Where are our gaps? Where are places that where we can fill in? What do we know from this information, and what don't we know? And if there's more information that we don't know, that we don't have, how do we go out there and how do we gather it so that we can make good and strong informed decisions? So it's an ongoing process. Again, it's an ongoing process of looking at our goals, looking at how we're gathering information, what information we do or don't have, what other ways can we get this, who else can you ask, and then applying that so that we can always move forward with our students learning at the center of our decisions.
I would say that in terms of measuring learning and whether we are meeting the needs of all of our students, there is a ton of testing out there. Some of this is taken out of our hands. There is mandatory New York State testing. My kids, I know in the elementary school, they do those little tests on the computer, but I mean, it's really hard to come up with testing systems that are actually measuring whether our kids are learning. When they do the little computerized tests, I forget what they're called. Maybe Catherine, you remember what they're called.
iReady.
On the spot. iReady, yes, the iReady tests. I mean, to some extent, they are they're good markers, I guess, but they're not always an accurate measurer of how your kid is actually doing in math that year, or how much they've learned in the 3 months that they've been in that classroom. I also think that it's important to take student feedback into consideration as well, because it's not just about our students, but it's also about our teachers and what techniques the kids thought were particularly effective versus what wasn't as effective. And it might be hard to wrangle that kind of feedback from a kindergartner, maybe a little easier with a high schooler. But I think that not just student feedback, but also parent feedback as well.
Thank you. The next question, what knowledge do you have of the special education programs in Bethlehem? What do you see as goals for these programs for the next 2 years? And Ms. Nadeau, you'll start, and then Ms. Grasso, and then Mr. McLaughlin.
Well, what I know of our programs is that we are working hard to provide students with the resources and the support they need at the level that they need it to make sure that every student is successful. I also know, however, that sometimes these are really challenging conversations, and that the district can and must be a really strong thought partner in making sure that we are really hitting our goals in this level. Right now, we're in the midst of considering shifting the way to provide aid support for students. And I think this is a really interesting and really important conversation, because we're working on balancing the needs of individual students, making sure that they have the support that they need, and also make sure that they've got the space and the ability to work in their classrooms as students and not always have an aid if it's not always needed. So there's a balance there of making sure that we've got sufficient support that a student can really thrive, and that we're also making sure that the student has the opportunity to grow. And so I think when it comes down to it, this is a new path for the district. And we're going to have to see how this goes, and we're going to have to really listen, and we're going to have to look at the data, and we're going to have those conversations with families one-on-one. Because one thing I know is that special ed is the opposite of one size fits all. And when parents come in and students come in and family comes in and they have additional needs for their students, the district needs to be listening closely and working together with a family to figure out what is the best type of support for this student. And I think that there is always opportunity to grow in this arena, because there are just as many students as we have that many different ways of learning.
I can't remember who goes next.
Sorry, you are next, Ms. Grasso.
Oh, I'm up. It's my turn. Okay. I had the opportunity to virtually watch the board meeting from last week. And there was a very detailed presentation about from the special education program providers during the board meeting. And it is amazing to me how more expanded the definition of special education has become over the past 30 years. It's nothing like when I was in elementary school. And just the breadth of services that are available to catch every kid where they are, and to address any possible needs that they have that are impairing their ability to learn. In that presentation, as I said, I was really impressed by the dedication of the educators involved in the program, and they clearly love what they do. They have a lot of ideas about how to improve, and it was evident to me that they're constantly improving. So I think that we're on the right path, and it is incumbent upon the board to support that program and to provide the resources that are needed to continue to grow and expand the program and to address the needs of every student.
Okay. So I was at the meeting last week, and I heard the presentation as well. One thing that I did hear that Catherine kind of alluded to was with the aides. Traditionally, with IEPs, a student that needs one-on-one attention per their IEP would be assigned a particular aide. The district is moving to attaching the aides to the program itself, as opposed to the individual students, per the conversation that was held at the board meeting. That raises some kind of interesting logistical questions. If you have a number of children that are students that are in that program, they're all going to have their own plan. That's what the I stands for in the IEP. They're usually quite detailed and have very specific things that the child needs and the methods to do that. And so if the aides are going to be done by the program, that means essentially all the aides are going to need to understand the details of all of the IEPs, which I don't think for an aide, I don't know if that is actually a great idea, to be honest with you. I don't think that it logistically makes a lot of sense. And I think at the end of the day, I don't think it'll be great for our students. I think it'll be awful for the aides. And I think it would be a step backwards. As I mentioned in my opening, I've talked to a handful of parents that are going through this process and have been going through this process with the district for a long time. And this is something that we really, really should take a really good look at and figure out how to do it better, because right now it is something where the district is not doing great by these students and their families. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start with Ms. Grasso, then Mr. McLaughlin, and then Ms. Nadeau. What policies do you propose to make schools more accessible for people with disabilities, including staff, parents, and students?
I'm trying to write down all the questions so that I don't have to ask you to repeat them 500 times. What policies to propose to make? Well, I think as many school facilities are in this picadillo where buildings were built a long time ago. They might not have every accommodation that we might wish that they did for people with disabilities to enter the building. So I think that as the district undertakes major facilities projects, accessibility should be at the forefront of those design decisions and projects. If there's a way, if we're renovating a particular space in the building and there is a way to make it more accessible, we should certainly do that. But those kinds of construction projects cost money. So as with everything, it's a matter of balancing resources. But certainly the district should have, and I'm sure that they do, have policies in place that require measures of accessibility for all of the buildings in the district.
I agree with a lot of what Lauren has said. We think that a lot of the buildings that are within the district are older and present a lot of challenges in that area. But I think the law and the federal law, state law is very clear in a lot of these. The schools need to be accessible, and they need to be accessible for all of our students. And I think that it is up to the board to make sure that this is a priority, and it is a priority for the administration. It is a priority for the facility folks, and the facility folks here at the district do a fantastic job. Our facilities are top notch, and they're always in really great shape. And I think that we just need to keep it a priority to make sure that the school and all of the areas of the school are accessible to all of our students and staff and families. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love this question because when we make a space more accessible, that actually makes it better for everyone who enters the space, right? Because if we're thinking about how do we navigate this space as easily as we can, or how do we make sure that the lighting is right, or that we've got good size fonts or anything like that, or that the volume is right, that the floor level is right. There's so many different things to think about. We're going to benefit anybody who comes into this space because it's going to be really well designed and it's going to be really easy to navigate. So I love the opportunity to make our buildings or our programs and our technology more accessible. And we've got top-notch folks addressing this. So I would also love to just use this as an invitation for anybody who's out there saying like, no, Catherine, we're not doing enough. Like, please reach out to the board, because this is something that I know we take very seriously. And that I want to prioritize in everything that we're doing. We're in the midst of a $40 million bond project. A lot of the pieces of the work center on accessibility, updating our buildings and all of that. I'm certain though that there's more that can be done, and I'm certain that there are things that we're not thinking of. So I think this is another opportunity for an ongoing conversation with the community about what do we want to see, and what is our vision for our spaces and for our programs. Because whenever we're faced with questions like this, it's an opportunity to grow and to expand. And I'd love to do anything I can to support that opportunity.
Thank you. The next question is, there has been considerable discussion about the future of the lab school. What do you think should happen to the lab school, and what role do you think the board should play in these decisions? So it's a discussion about the future of the lab school. What do you think should happen to the lab school? What role do you think the board should play in these decisions? And Mr. McLaughlin, you'll start off, and then Ms. Nadal and Ms. Grasso next.
Fortunately, I only got 2 minutes. What's been going on at the lab school has been really nothing short of a fiasco for the past months. And I think that the future of the lab school basically is that it needs the administration support. It's been lacking that for years, and it's been eroding the program, and the program has we're not going to be admitting 8th grade students next year into the program. And this cohort model requires a new influx of students every year for it to be viable and to maintain as it has in the past. The way that this process has happened is just almost, it's tragic. It's just been it's been without any public discussion. It's been completely transparent. But the lab school has been part of this community for over 20 years. It's an integral part of this community. And I think that its future should be built stronger, and the administration needs to get behind it in a way that it will survive for another 20 years and to build it even stronger than it is now. And excuse me. And I think that it is up to the board to make that happen, because the administration has clearly shown a not an interest in maintaining it, and in fact has been actively eroding it for years, including these past few months where they've actively basically prevented an 8th grade class from joining the lab school next year as freshmen. Thank you.
So when it comes down for what I want to see out of lab school, I want a strong lab school that continues to provide amazing opportunities for our students. I had the great experience of being a mentor to a lab school intern during COVID, and got a chance to really learn more about what the program is by working through as a mentor. And so I was impressed with the quality of the education. I was impressed with the engagement of the students. I was impressed with the entire community engagement around the lab school. And I think those are all really, really key pieces to move forward with. And I also heard throughout this conversation that lab school has a lot of challenges. This is something that the teachers said when they publicly shared their opinion through the union, saying that we've got issues that need to be addressed, and that we need to take time to address those. And I think that makes sense. So as we move forward, I want to find ways that the board can continue to support the lab school. I am part of a committee that the board formed specifically to dance with the questions of what do our students want and need, what do our families want and need, and how can we as a school provide that moving forward. So I am here for that work. That's what it all comes down to. And I think that there's definitely great opportunity for the lab school to continue, and for it to grow and to shift and to be, excuse me, to live the vision of a school within a school, where we've got students working together with family, with community, with teachers to create a learning experience that's tailored to them and that really enhances the whole community.
So I don't have a child in the high school yet. So I was not aware that the lab school existed until several months ago. But and that's the extent of my familiarity with it. I'm not a parent of a child that has gone through it, but it sounds like a really interesting program. I understand that it has been in existence for about 30 years, but that over the past 5 to 10 years, the program has faced declining enrollment. when you have a really cool program, but kids aren't signing up for it, there's something going on there. So I think that the committee approach, forming the committee to discover what is going on with the lab school and why those numbers are going down. The lab school, like any other program that the district is running, needs to change with the times. So if there are things that we can do differently or better to allow students that are interested in participating in lab school to actually participate, we should consider doing those things. But I understand that resource allocation is no joke. So if the answer is that kids are just not interested in that form of learning anymore, then that's okay. But it doesn't sound to me like that is the case. So I think that the board should support the community and the teachers and the students that are involved in the lab school program, solicit feedback, bring everyone together. Let's figure out what isn't working with the program and how we can improve it to make it more accessible to the students that are interested in doing it. Sorry for my dog. She's a guard dog.
I didn't hear it. Thank you. So the next question, and we'll start with Ms. Nadeau. What role do you think instructional technology should play in teaching and learning, particularly in elementary and middle school classrooms?
Oh, this is another great question. So I think that technology has its role, right? We are here tonight talking to each other on Zoom. It allows for connection. It allows for information sharing. It allows for teaching. And study after study after study after study after study has shown that engaging with information and learning in a hands-on, face-to-face way is really what developing minds need. So I think it's incredibly important that we are introducing our students to technology, that we are helping them learn to navigate the digital space, that we are supporting them as they figure out how to use the nuts and bolts of everyday life in 2024. That's all really important. And I want to make sure that it's got its rightful place in the classroom and that it never takes over. We have kids who are on screens for hours and hours each day. And there comes a point, and I'm not an educational expert. I can't tell you exactly what that point is, but there comes a point where it is too much. And especially when we think about our learners with additional needs and our learners with social emotional needs that are a bit additional as well. Like finding that community connection is so important. So I think it's important. I think it's got to be there, but I think it's really got to be tempered. I think that we need to focus on the face-to-face, hands-on type of learning. So yeah, thanks for the question.
Ms. Grasso, you're next.
Christine, could you just read the question one more time?
Sure. What role? Your dog just barked. Okay. What role do you think instructional technology should play in teaching and learning, particularly in elementary and middle school classrooms?
Well, after my daughter started at the middle school this year and I went for parent night and I saw all of the technology in the school. And then at some point during that first week, I was like, where's all your textbooks? And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, well, when I was in school, we would get assigned new textbooks at the beginning of every school year and you would cover it with a paper bag. And it's crazy to me that that doesn't exist anymore because kids learn on their Chromebooks. Their teachers have smart screens and that is how they teach their lessons every day. So, technology is already very present in our classrooms, and it's going to stay that way. It's not going anywhere. But I do appreciate what Catherine's point that you know, kids are on screens all the time, and we need to find ways to find a balance between collaborative, actual person-to-person learning, and using that technology in the classrooms. I think the other challenge is that, you know, teachers come in all ages and abilities, and not all teachers are comfortable using the technology that is becoming increasingly more dominant in our classrooms. So I think it's really important to provide support to our teachers so that they can learn to use those technology sources on a daily basis. I also think it's really cool that we are bringing technology into instructional programs. You know, there's the IT help desk in the high school, and it is staffed by or actual volunteer students. They're earning, like, they're forming real life experience that they can take with them into their future studies in college, and perhaps even as a career one day.
So yeah, great question. And it is certainly a big part of education these days. And as Lauren said, and I agree with her, it's not going anywhere. It's going to be part of the educational model going forward. And I think, you know, personally, I think that we need, as Catherine said, we need to make sure that we balance that with more face-to-face interaction time, because, you know, between these kids who have gone through a pandemic and also, you know, spent a lot of time on the screens already, you know, we all have a little catching up to do in terms of our face-to-face. You know, we missed out on a good couple of years of that. And so we need to make sure we balance that. Additionally, I think it's also important that as software and e-learning and all that other stuff becomes a bigger part of the kids' lives, that we make sure that we are educating them also on the dangers of online learning and the online experience. You know, not just with, you know, chat rooms and other, you know, predatory folks out there, but also, you know, screen addiction, you know, TikTok and all the other things that just keep kids' eyeballs glued to their screen, and how to, you know, make sure that they're not spending too much time on it. So I think that it's a balancing act. It's something that's not going away, but at the same time, it's, you know, it's something that we need to monitor and make sure that it's being used appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grasso, you're going to start up next. As a board member, what will you do to ensure all students in your district, particularly those without reliable internet services, have access to the same educational opportunities as all other students?
That's also a really good question and a hard one. You know, in a relatively affluent community, I think that perhaps that challenge is not as prominent as it might be in other districts. So in that respect, we are fortunate. But that challenge is real. My kid does all of her homework on her Chromebook. So how does a kid who might not have internet access in their home, excuse me, cold, just do their homework at night? Now, I know that our community does have lots of public means of accessing the internet, but it's just not the same. The public library has a great Wi-Fi, and I know that our schools do have, especially the middle and high school, do have opportunities for students to stay in the building to do any studying that they need to do after school is over. But I know that state government has put forward a number of initiatives to ensure that internet accessibility is available to everyone, even in remote areas. So I think that it is the responsibility of the board to pursue and engage in those initiatives as they become available.
You're up next, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you. I didn't want to step over Catherine. I just was double checking. So, as Lauren just said, all the kids have the Chromebooks nowadays. An internet connection is absolutely, it's pretty much a requirement for these kids to do their assigned work. And not all kids have it. And if the school is going to require online learning, then they need to provide solutions for those kids who don't have access to it. Hotspots, okay, they're a little device about this big, picks up a cellular connection that's in the area and allows the student to then use that to access the internet. They should be available for students that need them to make sure that they can access the internet when they're at home. And also, the school can offer lab times, quote unquote, when, after hours of the school to make sure that kids that may not have that access can spend a little bit of time after school or whatever to complete whatever work is necessary. And I'm not sure if the district does this, but I really hope they do, is they should survey all the families at the beginning of the year to find out basically what is their internet situation at home. I don't remember ever getting one. It doesn't mean I didn't, we didn't, but I think it's something that would be very helpful to basically, in a confidential way, find out who needs this help and so that we could proactively get it to them. Thank you.
I think this is another example of a way that the schools can be a community connector, because as Lauren was saying, and as Jason was saying, there are different support services that are out there. And we've got great social workers, great counselors, and of course, great teachers who are in our school working with our students day in and day out. And through those interactions, we can get a pretty good sense beyond the, beyond the surveys, beyond the folks we know have need for additional social supports to and economic supports and supports for things like internet, right? Through those one-on-one connections, we can kind of dive a little bit deeper and be working to understand what those needs really are on a case-by-case basis. I know this is something that our educators and our counselors and social workers have their eyes out for. And I think it's a great question to think about, what more can we be doing? Are there opportunities to provide additional resources beyond making sure that our schools are open and available for students to be working in outside of the school hours? So I really thank you for the question. I think it's one that I'm going to take back and figure out, is there anything else that we can be doing?
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, you'll be starting up for this and then on to the next, right? So as a board member, how would you suggest promoting student voter pre-registration at 16 and voter registration at 18? How would you ensure students with disabilities have access to these programs as well?
Oh, great question. I think that it is, a big part of the educational process is teaching our young people how to become adults. And one of the first privileges that you have when you actually become a quote unquote legal adult is the right to vote. And I think that making that part of the educational process, starting probably in the sophomore, junior year, should be part of what the district does. And in terms of the students with disabilities, the district should make sure, and I know all the buildings are accessible, but they should also have other accessibility tools, whether they be Braille or what have you, to make sure that the students do have the ability to vote. But I do think that registration and pre-registration should be encouraged in the classroom, and should be something that the district strives to make sure that we have a group of civically involved young people moving forward. Thank you.
I think as district leaders, one of the best things that we can do is talk about it to our students talk about it in our community, talk about it with our families and with our neighbors and our friends and so on and so forth. I mean, this is a case where when we get down to what exactly is discussed in the classroom on any given day, that's a lot of that is our teachers' jobs. However, as a board, we can set the tone that this is a huge priority, that this is something that we need, is civically engaged young people who are showing up to vote and who know how to access voting and how to get registered and get out there, and how to do that with any needs that you bring to the table, whether, you know, again, whether that's something around a polling place, whether it's got something to do with a specific way of engaging with voter registration. Those are certainly certainly issues that we can address. And I think the best way that the board can do that is to set a strong example, be having those conversations, be talking with the administration, asking good questions. How and what else can we be doing to support and promote this?
So, logically, this is an idea that would need to live within the high school, given the relevant ages of the students that would be targeted for voter readiness. I think that the first step is to engage the social studies and government teachers to see what their ideas are. What do their students respond to? What during political campaign seasons and election seasons, what are their studies focusing on? And of those studies, what interests the students the most? I haven't registered to vote in a long time. I registered a very long time ago, so I don't know what the how easy it is to do on your cell phone. But I bet it is pretty easy. And if you can register to vote on a cell phone, I know that the high school is participating in a program to keep those phones locked up during the day, and I think that's a great idea. But maybe those phones could be sprung from Hawk for a short duration of time if the student is willing to use their phone to sign up to vote. But I think there's a lot of great ideas here. And again, it's the board's role to encourage, support, and to provide the resources to engage in these kinds of programs.
Thank you. The next question, what do you think about the district's policy that students are not required to obtain parental guardian consent to be addressed by the preferred name or pronouns during the school day, at school functions, or on any non-permanent school records? And we'll start with you, Ms. Nadeau.
Thank you. So the district policy has largely been following along with state law and with recommended policy on the topic. And I think that students, have a right to be addressed by the pronouns and the names that they choose. And so provided that, again, a student would need parental permission to change any legal papers or any legal documents, right? As an underage student, that's something that makes sense. Yet in the school, if I have a child who wants to be called by a different nickname, that happens. And I think the same applies here.
Ms. Grasso, you're next.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for this question. It is a very difficult question, though. And I think that the school district is compelled to follow New York State human rights law. And it is the responsibility of the board to ensure that any policies of the district is in compliance with New York State law or even any relevant federal laws. So as long as the district is following state and federal law, I think that is the extent of the board's control over that issue.
one hits a little close to home. Our third child, Jude, when she was born, she was Sarah. About a year, maybe 2 years now, she told us that she would prefer to go by Jude, and that she doesn't necessarily always feel that she is a girl, and so she prefers to be called Jude. And to the school's credit, they adapted very well, and they've been calling her Jude since then. And I agree that yes, we have to, follow the laws, but these studies have shown that kids that want to identify in a different way than they were born with and the name they were born with do so much better when they're supported. They're supported by their families, they're supported by their peers, they're supported by their school. And so I think that from our personal experience, that hasn't been an issue here. The school has done a great job addressing our child, and I expect them to continue to do so and with other children. But yes, we have to, follow the laws, and until our child is 18, then no official formal name changes. But if they want to be called Jude, by all means, let's call them Jude.
Thank you. The next question, when discussing a difficult or controversial statement, how do you think board members should address each other or members of the administration? And we'll start with you, Ms. Grasso.
That's an easy one. There is no place for rudeness or incivility in district functions or in conversations where the Board of Education is concerned. There should absolutely, board members should address each other with respect at all times, and that same respect should be given to any parents, students, members of the community that would like to address the board or present their views at a board meeting.
Yeah,
Mr.
Lauren said that very well. If you can't disagree with somebody like an adult and in a civil manner, I don't believe you belong in the board, and I don't believe that you should be addressing the board in any other way. I think that there have certainly been times, particularly in these past 5 to 6 months, where I have had significant disagreements with the board, some of the decisions that were made, disagreements with the administration. And I like to believe that I've addressed them all in a civil manner, in a manner of respect, while respectfully disagreeing with them. And I think that, should be the case moving forward and always. And there's not a single person on that board that doesn't have the best interests of the kids, of our students in mind. It's just that, certain circumstances, disagreements happen. And when they happen, let's be civil about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll be starting with you, Mr. McLaughlin. How do you think the board members should respond to comments and suggestions from members of the teaching staff?
I'm sorry, Christine, may I take a stab at the question about how we relate?
My apologies, did I skip you? I'm
Sorry.
sorry. I thought, my apologies.
No apology needed. I will just say, it's very simple. We need to treat each other with respect and with kindness and with empathy and with compassion. And I'll take a second with my remaining time, because I think that applies no matter what, to kind of go back to the previous question about pronouns and names, because I stumbled with that a little bit, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is a very hot button issue. But when it comes right down to it,
we don't have an opportunity to go back, and you'll have to answer the question, and then we'll move on to the next question. We don't have that opportunity now. Thank you. If you want to finish this question, then you can, and otherwise we'll move on to the next question.
Certainly. So it comes down to treating everyone that we come into contact with respect, with civility, with compassion, and with empathy. and with using their names and their pronouns.
Thank you, and my apologies. How do you think the board members should respond to comments and suggestions from members of the teaching staff?
I think it has to be taken with, the utmost seriousness. They are the front line. They are the ones that are standing in front of our students every day, including 3 of my children and a lot of other people's children out there. And I think that they, better than anybody, knows what goes on in those classrooms. Excuse me. And I think that if they have a concern, something is not working the way it should, or there's issues going on, I think that the board should really listen to them, and then, if need be, act on it. And I think that that they are literally the lifeline of the district is the teachers, and they have to be listened to and respected, and and listened to. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, the teachers are the ones who are in the classroom day in and day out. They've gone to school for at least 6 years, some of them considerably longer. They've developed expertise. They have a passion for the work. They show up for work every day with the goal of teaching and supporting our students. And to make it personal, my children, right? And I am deeply, deeply grateful for that. So their needs need to be centered. They are stakeholders. They are incredibly important stakeholders in these conversations. When we're talking about what does our district need, we can't figure that out unless we know what our teachers need. And it's great to be in conversation with them. And I think that the more that the dialogue is open, the more that the board is listening, asking, and receiving that information, the stronger our entire school community is.
Christine, could you read that question one more time? Was it, how should the board listen to teachers?
How do you think that board members should respond to comments and suggestions from members of the teaching staff?
Oh, okay. It's a little bit of an odd question, right? So, I mean, obviously, I would say that the board should value and respect the opinion or comments from teachers, but I can see a world where the teaching staff is slightly removed from the board, right? The teachers report to the administration within their school building. The administration may or may not report up to the superintendent's office and or the board, the concerns that they're hearing from teachers or the ideas that they're hearing from the teachers in their classrooms. So I think that the board should make every effort to cultivate a more close relationship between, excuse me, I'm so congested, between the Board of Education directly and the teachers. Because if you're relying on a game of telephone to get feedback from teachers, that's never the way to do it. You need to hear directly from those stakeholders. And as Catherine said, teachers are critically important in our school community. They are at the front lines. They are the ones that are with their kids every day, seeing the challenges that they're facing. And let's not forget too, that teachers are people. They're adults with their own lives, their own families, their mortgages, and their own mental health needs. And I think that we can't expect our teachers to be extraordinary educators of our children if we aren't taking care of our teachers. So I think that piece is important as well.
Thank you. The next question. Board members need to be committed to making BCSD a better district as a whole. Please list one thing that needs to be addressed at the elementary schools, one thing at the middle school, and one thing at the high school. So that's 3 different issues, 1 item for each one. Please list the things that need to be addressed in the elementary school, 1 thing in the middle school, and 1 thing in the high school.
And I'm starting this time, right? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the easy part of this is just channeling my elementary student and just saying we need more recess. However, I know it's not entirely that as easy as it might seem. I think so. I think for our elementary students, though, I mean, my joke about recess aside, I think figuring out how we can provide the balance that they need between the big gross motor body movements, play, childhood, and the really deep learning that needs to happen at these really early ages. It's been really cool to see actually with the new reading curriculum that's been rolled out this past year, how teachers are incorporating big body movements into things like learning phonics and things like that. I think that's incredibly important. I also think at the elementary school, we've got to watch how our new reading curriculum unfolds and get feedback both from teachers, students, and parents about how that is happening, because it's been a big shift over the past couple of years throughout the state of education, this conversation about how do we teach reading to our youngest readers. At the middle school, it's such a time of transition. I want to make sure that we are supporting our students with as much resources from the counseling office and student engagement, and helping them to navigate these online, offline spaces, how to navigate the learning that comes outside of the classroom with social growth, and to do that as well as we can. We have amazing counseling staff at the middle school. So how can we continue to support them? And then at the high school, you're going to get such different needs depending on who you're talking to at any given time. I want to see the lab school thrive. Our CTE educational opportunities are amazing. I want to see them continue to thrive, and so much more. We could talk about this all day.
Ms. Grasso.
I am taking Catherine's idea and I am running with it. I think at the elementary level, it is critically important to be as active as possible to get all of those wiggles out. My son especially has grappled with that issue. And you know, at various ages within the elementary education, you know, there's a huge difference between the movement needs of kindergartners and versus a 5th grader who is maybe a little more inclined to sit still for a while. So I do think that expanding physical education opportunities, but not just physical education, but opportunities to move throughout the school day. Middle school, I think it's all about the mental health. It's all about supporting pre-adolescents in some very awkward and uncomfortable times in their lives, especially when they're moving from the safety of the elementary school nest into the enormous middle school with all of those kids that they've never met before because they went to different elementary schools. And then at the high school, I think the biggest struggle for high schoolers is grappling social media and cell phone usage. And I really love the initiative where the high school students lock up their phones during the day. I think that's a great idea. And I think that that program should be monitored for student and teacher feedback, and that it could be expanded or modified if needed.
Excellent. So yes, elementary school, I think that, you know, these kids got really, you know, they're affected by the pandemic. And I think that socialization, you know, even kids, you know, going into kindergarten and going into, you know, 1st grade, they still spend a lot of time on screens. I think that getting them off of the screens and teaching them how to interact with their peers and making sure that's a big priority for the schools moving forward. Middle school, kids at that age, and I have a middle schooler right now. They're absorbing a ton of information out there, whether it be on YouTube or whatever. They're just like sponges, and when people come off and they sound like they know what they're talking about, they tend to just believe it and take it as gospel. So I think at this age, I think it's not so much teaching them what to think, but really how to think, and to make sure that they, understand that all sources of information may not necessarily be appropriate or accurate. So just give them the tools that they need to understand that the massive amount of information that is hitting them like a fire hose, how to navigate all that and how to basically kind of figure out their world as they're getting into high school. Now, in terms of high school, got 30 seconds for this one. So one of the things that I've heard from a lot of high school kids, and I do have 2 high schoolers myself, is that there's a lot of kids in the high school that, and it's the same message for almost all of them, they don't feel seen. They feel that they're invisible walking through the halls, just going from class to class, not really acknowledged and not appreciated for who they are. And not really sure why that is, but I think it's something we should look at. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll be starting with Ms. Grasso. Would you support a survey to assess how students and parents feel about skipping lunch or study hall to enable a student to take 8 classes?
Whoa. Would I support an initiative that would allow a student to skip lunch or study hall so that they can take another class?
This is a survey
Oh, a survey
to assess, yes.
to assess. Sure. Why not do a survey? It's an interesting idea. If we have students that that want to spend more time in educational instruction, we should certainly support that. What worries me is a kid missing lunch in order to do that. How are they going to eat? I mean, you have to eat during the school day. And I know for my daughter in the middle school, I told her, why can't you have a snack like while you're walking from class to class? And she was like, oh, I can't do that. People don't do that. And I was like, okay. But, I think as long as the child is able to take on that additional challenge, if they can find time in their evening to make sure they're doing all of they're getting all of their homework done, and we can find a way for that child to eat, certainly. But if we're talking about a survey to see how reasonable or popular that idea is, absolutely.
I agree. I see no harm in a survey, and I think that based on the results, I think that we can, the board should potentially take a look at it if it's something that there is a high degree of interest in the community. There's no harm in talking about it and
Yeah, I think a survey is a fine idea. I also think we see the results in the way that students choose to schedule their time. Right now, it's already an option for a student to choose to take a lunch, or if they are looking for that additional instructional time to eat lunch in the classroom while they are, while they're in class. And so I think we see that play out, and I think that if there is a need for a community-wide, survey, I think that that's a fine thing to do. Absolutely.
Thank you. The next question, what is the best way of determining the need, the role, and the purpose of school resource officers, in parens, police officers? And we'll start with you, Mr. McLaughlin.
excellent question, and a very challenging question at that. So studies have shown, including the leading study on this was actually done at the University of Albany, that there is no, everybody tends to, when they think about resource officers, they're mostly worried about, the worst case scenario, a school, a shooting in the school. To date, there hasn't been enough data to actually be able to determine if resource officers impact a shooting, whether it happens or not, and then the impact of it. So they're not really sure yet. But what they do know is that schools that do have resource officers see a 30% decrease in other crimes, and including, assaults. Excuse me, which obviously would be a positive, but it does eliminate a layer of the school disciplinary process. You see a significant number of students with that have resource officers. A lot more of them get suspended to the point of where they miss school. There's also a huge jump in the number of students that actually get arrested because they're skipping, again, that school disciplinary process. And the thing that I think is most concerning about SROs is the impact that they have on people of color. They often find having armed police officers in the school is very intimidating, and studies have also shown that they are targeted more and more frequently than their white counterparts. And if school resource officers is something that's going to be part of BCSD, I hope every effort is going to be made to mitigate that to the best of the district's ability, and take into account that not everybody feels the same about it. Thank you.
Christine, is it me or Catherine?
It'll be Catherine, yes.
So I think just as with any other program in our schools, if we are bringing school resource officers into the district, we have to have a really very clear, transparent understanding of what their role is, how they're fulfilling that role, and how well it's working and how well it's going. In my time on the board, we've had a couple of different presentations from the school resource officers themselves, as well as the administration. And I know that the administration has worked to get more information up on our website and gather more information and more data about how the program is going. I also know that I came into this conversation with a very particular point of view and a lot of skepticism and concern around our SROs. And one of the things that allowed me to deepen my understanding of the role they play is hearing from our counselors in our buildings when they presented at various board meetings about the different roles that the SROs play and how helpful they are in reaching students in a way that that our counselors may or may not be able to. And so it's a really complex issue. There are no simple answers. There are a lot of studies that show that a lot of harm can be done with SROs who are not acting properly, or with SROs who are, or programs that aren't living up to it. I am glad that the district is moving in more of a way to report on what these programs are, on what we're doing. They're answering questions about it, and we have some really good sense of what it is we're asking SROs to do in our school. And that's something that I want to continue to work on and make sure continues to happen, because for some folks, they add an element of safety, and for some folks, they do the exact opposite. So we need to be able to really engage the in the conversation and provide strong reasons around why we do or don't engage in a way or not. So thank you.
Christine, could you read me the question again, please?
Sure. What is the best way of determining the need, the role, and the purpose for school resource officers?
I don't know if I know the best way to determine that, but I think of school resource officers as not being policemen in your school, trying to, arrest your kids, but they are there to keep our kids safe. They are there for educational purposes. There's a lot of educational programming that can take place in the arena of social media awareness and for our adolescents, smartly handling their exposure to social media and what to look out for and what to tell mom or dad about if something weird happens to you. But also, you know, active shooter training, and there's just a plethora of safety-minded education that SROs can bring to school settings. And I also like the idea of maybe some kids looking to their SROs as a role model, you know, encouraging those supportive relationships between kids that might be interested in a career in law enforcement or a related field. So I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. So we're going to start wrapping up. I want to thank you all for your time and for all of your answers. Ms. Grasso, you will go first. Then it'll be Ms. Nadeau and then Mr. McLaughlin. You each have 2 minutes each for your closing statement.
Okay. Thank you again to everyone who came together to help organize this tonight. Thank you to the district staff. Thank you to anyone who took the time out of their busy Wednesday evening to actually watch this and to listen and or submit questions ahead of time. And thank you to Catherine and Jason for being really exceptional people. I really appreciated listening to your perspectives. I learned some things from both of you. And I am glad to be here, and I am looking forward to hopefully serving on the board.
I would also like to offer my thanks to the league, to the district, to our interpreters, and to the entire accessibility team for hosting this fantastic event, and to the community for submitting fantastic questions. So thank you, because none of these are easy. None of them have simple answers, and they all require all of us to show up. So I hope to continue showing up for you. I hope to continue showing up in this conversation in this way as a member of the Board of Education. I hope to continue to hear from folks on these topics, because they're all ongoing conversations that are unfolding in real time. And, you know, as they say, democracy is not a spectator sport. So thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. And please don't ever hesitate to reach out if there's anything that I can do, if there's anything that the board can do. The Board of Ed is here to listen. And it's hard not to make the joke that we're from the government, we're here to help. But we are genuinely are parents and people who are here to serve. So thank you for the opportunity to serve. I've taken it as the highest honor, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah, thank you for the women's voters of Albany County for hosting, the accessibility staff, the district staff, and a big thank you for the audience for taking a little time out of your evening to join us. And thank you to Lauren and Catherine for being here as well. One of the benefits of school or town boards is that the members of the community, they usually consist of members of the community from diverse backgrounds. Believe my experience solving complicated issues within large organizations, managing both people and projects, will provide the board with a new skill set. There have been recent situations the administration has not been transparent with their communication, causing significant frustration for students and their families. The community has not heard anything from the board about the lack of transparencies, which suggests they approve the actions and methods of the administration. We need a board that not only will listen to the community, but a board that isn't afraid to ask the tough questions. The board needs a proven leader who understands large organizations and how they work, a leader that is accountable and expects accountability from others, and believes in a Bethlehem where all students are given the best possible education. I understand some people might have some concern about the fact that I haven't been in the district for as long as some other folks have. And I just want to say that I get it. You know, sometimes it helps to have a lot of experience and understand the history, but I'm here to lead, not to lead the past. I'm here to help lead the future. And my name is Jason McLaughlin. And on May 21st, I would really like your vote. Please visit jasonforboe.com for more information about the campaign. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you all. Thank you for everybody who is watching. Thank you to the candidates for demonstrating your engagement in civics and for engaging in the democratic process. Thank you also again to our sponsors, the Bethlehem Central School District. This has been recorded and you could find it on the school district's website. If you liked what you saw and heard tonight, consider becoming a league member. You could find information about the league at our website, and you could find information about voting at vote411.org. And remember to vote on May 21st. Thank you.